Folks, today I have a very special treat. Got my new friend here, Greg Williams. He is the master negotiator and body language expert. He studied negotiation tactics and strategies for more than 3 decades and spent 20 plus years studying the way body language can affect negotiation outcomes. Greg, go to his bio. He's won all the awards. He has his own podcast, Greg Williams, the master negotiator and body language expert podcast. He has multiple best-selling books, and he has me extremely paranoid of how I'm using my hands and looking at the camera right now. Greg, thanks for joining me, friend.
Thank you for inviting me, Charles. And hey, your body language is spot on.
Is it? I don't know what that means. I like to think it's spot on. I talk with my hands, so if somebody were to ever handcuff me, I may go completely mute.
Well, you know what? Let's just highlight something you just did. Specificity.
Okay.
With that thumb and that finger right there. That's something to note when people speak because they're speaking from their mindset of being extremely specific. It's something to note when you actually engage with people. We could talk about that a little bit later on.
Sure.
But hey, it's your show.
So I'm all right. I'm being specific when I say this, and so let's back up just a step. And I may be throwing you a curve. I didn't even tell you I was going to do this, but how do you become a master negotiator? Give us the Cliff Notes version of kind of how you got to where you are now.
Practice, practice, practice. No,
Okay.
seriously. We all are attuned to observing things that occur in someone's body language per what they are saying non-verbally versus what they're saying verbally. So from a very early age, literally from the time I was 4 years old, I was allowed to shine shoes outside of a corner bar in a neighborhood that was safe when I was a kid. And I used to observe how people would come into that environment with one mindset. And I'd ask, would you like to have a shine, Mr. Jones, or something of that nature?
Sure.
And Mr. Jones would say, no. And then he'd go into the bar. And then I noticed his mindset had shifted based on his body language being in a happier state when he'd come out. And I'd ask, want to shine, Mr. Jones? And he'd go, sure, sonny boy. And I just picked up on the differences between what occurred prior to and what occurred after per the body language gestures emitted as a small kid. As I grew up, I started becoming more attentive to just that. How do people use their body to exact what they are saying? And again, how does that match up to the words that they're using? So, for example, if I said to you, Charles, boy, I'm really happy to be here. Now, you heard the words.
Right.
Did you see the gesture of me literally? Yeah, exactly. And here's the other point of that. The body attempts to stay in a state of comfort. Thus, it always wants to be aligned with how it feels. If one says, oh, I'm really happy to be here while pulling away, the body is saying, no, I'm not. And the body is out of a state of comfort when making that statement, which is why the body is literally pulling away. Thus, if there's a distinction to be made between someone's words and their body language, observe the body language. Now, over the years, I read everything about body language that I could get my hands on. When I started doing TV interviews, I was brought in a lot of times to analyze the body language gestures that those in the news were emitting based on what they were saying. And
Really?
analyzing to what degree they were speaking the truth or kind of, let's say, winging it or shaving the truth as it might be. And I just honed my expertise in that matter. It's something that all of your viewers and listeners can do if they just start paying attention. Because as I said, we're intuitive when it comes to reading body language. And when we start talking about negotiation, we'll talk about how body language aids in the process of truly knowing and hearing unspoken words when you're in the negotiation process.
Well, let's just jump straight into that. I got a bunch of people that watch this are in advisory roles. They may or may not do a ton of negotiation, but their negotiation may look a little more like a sales process. If you're a financial advisor working with somebody to move their assets over to you, if you're an insurance agent, if you're a business coach, they trying to negotiate to not just get people on board, but to listen to them, to follow them. So what are this is a loaded question, but what are some of the things they initially need to be looking for when they're doing this?
Well, depending upon how they are engaging someone.
Okay.
If they're doing it in person versus over the phone, there's a different style of, let's say, negotiation that you should be aware of. Because now, why did I just pause there?
I don't know.
Exactly.
I'm so glad you didn't freeze up on me.
Now, see, that's something that one can do, though, because you and I
Right.
are in an environment right now where I know good and darn well I can alter your perspective by just pausing,
Yeah.
slowing down in speech, or something of that nature. So when you're on the phone talking with someone, you have to be attentive to what it is that's going on in their environment. You can hear what's going on in their environment if you can't see it, based on the pace of speech at which they're talking, and making an assumption about what thought process they may be engaged in based on what you just said, as opposed to all of a sudden they say, wow, I really do like exactly what you
Right.
presented a moment ago. You just heard the level of excitement rise in their voice, and now you're on the right path, and you should continue down that path to enhance whatever offer you're actually promoting. Let's do it in reverse. You've made a nice presentation, and you should be gathering information via what someone says, how they respond as you are making your presentation. Do not present so fast that you do not give the person with whom you're speaking an opportunity to display exactly how they're
Ooh.
receiving your information. Because if you are just talking without allowing them to respond, you're not getting the valuable feedback you need in order to know if you need to shift your presentation. So, again, being attentive in that manner when you're just speaking on the phone is something that all salespeople should be aware of. And it's one that good salespeople are definitely aware of. Let's talk about the in person environment now. Do you notice exactly how the person comes into your environment? Do they come in looking around? Or are they looking directly at you? How long do they look at you, as opposed to looking at you directly and then turning away momentarily and then looking back at you based on what you are saying? If they're excited about something, you might see the momentary exhalation in their facial expressions. Again, we did the pulling away earlier
Right.
situation. You make an offer to them and they pull away. Again, that's valuable feedback to say, wait a minute, something may not be as thoughtful or as promising as I thought it was going to be. I need a probe about that to find out exactly what's going on. Now, did you hear the
Hmm.
you ask someone, so what do you think about my proposal? Um, it's okay. Oh boy,
Right.
boy. You heard all kinds of signs that said, "Whoa, I have a lot more work to do." Number one,
Sure.
you heard the as the pause for time to reflect on what answer was going to be given, and then you heard it's okay, not very convincing, and thus you need to probe further. Well, what do you mean by it's okay? What would be better in this particular situation? Now, here's the other aspect of that, too, Charles. A good negotiator knows how to use these tactics to get you, while you think you're probing him or her deeper, to actually allow you to expose more of what you're going to do. And
How's that?
okay. So let's do a quick role play.
Okay.
Two of us. Tell me which I can do it either way. You can be the salesperson. I can be the salesperson. You can be the client. I can be the client. Tell me which.
I'm the salesperson.
Okay.
We're gonna
Okay. Let's
we're
go
gonna
for
we're gonna look at my explainer video business.
it. Okay. Okay. Go for it. You're the salesperson.
All right, so we're on. You've inquired. I followed up with you. Said, hey, Greg. Obviously, you wanted to chat a little bit about explainer videos. These are 90-second stories that you can use on your website to educate people, let them know exactly what you do, and there's a variety of ways that you can use it. Normally, before I got too deep into it, I'd ask them kind of what questions they have. So they're smiling and nodding along with me. I'm getting nervous now. So as I say, so it's a pretty simple concept. You simply fill out a 6-question form. I take care of all of the other work. I'll write the script. You get to approve it. Once you approve it, we lock it in, send it to the voiceover artist. And from there, 17 days or less, you'll have a video proof that you can review, unlimited revisions until you're happy with it. Greg, after that, we send you the video along with 12 different ways to use it. So how does that sound?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me what means, Greg.
Okay, very good. Very good, number one. Well,
Okay.
means it sounds interesting.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind me asking, when you say it sounds interesting, what are you currently doing for your marketing, or what ways do you have to explain what you're doing now?
Well, let me ask you a question, Charles.
That's
What way
funny.
would you think I should be utilizing to enhance my marketing activities?
Primarily to close more leads and to make your life easier explaining what you do. Even though it seems very simple to you, it can be complicated for people that are inundated with thousands of messages per day. So a nice story-based 90-second video in, out, and lets them really understand what you're doing. So 3 ways: put it on your website, use it in email marketing, email follow-up, and that will immediately put you ahead of the game when trying to communicate to people that are interested in what you do.
And do you think our organization is in need of leads right now?
Not necessarily leads, but we're all in need of closing more of the leads that already come in. I can assume, I'm guessing, most of your leads probably come in through word of mouth and referral. Most of the people I work with in an advisory role do. And unless you're closing 100% of them, you could always have something that makes cutting that sales process down a step or three for you a lot easier.
What ways might we cut the sales process down even more so than what you're offering right now?
Well, in addition to what else you're doing is just trying to qualify people on the front end, creating more content so they can understand who you are, what you do. Interview style video that you produce like this on a regular basis. So by the time they get to you, they've seen you, understood who you are, and they're able to build that know, like, and trust factor. And then that 90-second video really clarifies your offering to them.
Okay, so aside from that, what else might you be able to offer?
Well, aside from that, just the like I just discussed, also do interview style videos to help you get on camera, to become more comfortable, to tell more of your own stories that people can see and understand who you are and what you do.
Okay, now time out.
All right.
Here's something to
I
always
didn't
remind
close you, Greg.
yeah, exactly. Because, and here's the thing that salespeople need to be mindful of, and those that are negotiating. First of all, my motto is you're always negotiating, because
Right.
what influences today's, or I should say, what engagements you have today influences tomorrow's opportunities or lack of. That's number one. Also, the way you engage today will impact future interactions that you have with the individuals to whom you're actually speaking. Okay, here's the big point of that whole exercise we just went through. I used questions to avoid answering your
You
question.
did.
Yes. And I was gathering more information from you. Now, by asking questions to gather more information, I can then position myself towards the end to pick at your different offerings. And the thing is, I can then seek to get a lower price point from you if I showed an interest in one particular aspect of your business, or use a red herring. So, for example,
Oh,
yes, and a red herring, by the way, is something that I, as a negotiator, may not
right.
really care that much about, but at the same time can use it just to use it as leverage,
Sure.
get you to possibly lower your price, offer more service,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I could actually say, well, Charles, I like what you've said. I really do. So now I've given you a compliment, and right
I
now,
know.
like, okay, he's pumping me up. And then I could say, but and let's say we've talked about price at that particular point in time.
Right.
Well, let me just ask outright, how much better can you do on the prices that you've named thus far? And well, if I did that, Charles, what would be your response?
I know it's going to sound like I'm pandering, because years ago I would probably negotiate a little bit. What I'd say in this case, say, Greg, I really appreciate it. I understand exactly what you're saying. However, the last 8 times I've done that, each time the we got a little sideways in the process. My client wasn't happy. Me and my team had some issues along the way. So from there, I've managed to learn the structure is what it is. If it's value to you, great. If not, I'll be able to help point you in the direction of somebody that could probably do it a little cheaper and different process.
So what you're saying is, if we were willing to offer you a $5 million contract, you would not be able to negotiate that lower.
Well, when you say a five, oh, red herring.
Ah,
All right, so yeah, let's say, yeah, if it was a $5 million contract, Greg, maybe I could figure out a way to do that. In this particular case, we're a little bit far off from the. I don't make too many $5 million videos.
and I threw that $5 million out number out
Yeah,
there randomly, but
yeah, you
depending
did.
on with whom you're speaking, it could be $100,000. It could
Right,
be it could be whatever number that would make them all of a sudden sit up and take notice. And the point of that is that could be nothing more than a red herring to make
sure,
you then say, well, yeah, of course I would negotiate if I'm doing hypothetically $100,000 of
sure.
business a year or something hypothetically, and I offered a $5 million contract. Whoa, wait a minute. Sure, I'd be willing to negotiate. Now, then I take that away and go, okay, so tell me to what degree you might be able to negotiate in this particular situation. And now, in most cases, I've hung that red herring out there as a possibility, and now I've opened the door for you to negotiate with me for a lower price point. Meanwhile, what you might want to do is to hone right in on that $5 million. And remember, the person asking questions in the negotiation is the person leading the negotiation at that particular point in time. Why? Because as I alluded to earlier, that person is gathering information as opposed to giving information. And in so doing, that person is actually gathering the information that will allow him or her to alter the offerings and or the flow of the negotiation. So in this case, what one may have done was say, well, Greg, let's discuss what that $5 million
Oh,
opportunity might look like. Because
right.
again, now you're challenging my assertion that I could hang a $5 million contract out there to you. And you, by asking that question, is now gathering more information. So
Gotcha.
yeah, so those are some of the things that salespeople should be aware of. And again, that's a perfect example of how one might use a possible red herring in such a situation, and or how to address it.
Do you use a red herring when you're the presenter?
Oh yes.
What
Yeah.
does that look like?
Well, again, hypothetically, let's flip this situation around.
Okay.
And let's say you're the one that really does want my services.
Yes, I want to hire the master negotiator.
Yeah, exactly. And I know because one always does background information to find out with whom he or she is negotiating with, per what they need and why they are reaching out to you, along with who else they might possibly have reached out to and the time frame in which they need your services. So in this particular situation, I might start off by confirming what I think I know and ask you, well, Charles, why did you reach out to me today?
Well, I need some additional support and help in figuring out how to properly negotiate with people when I am working with them to get either explainer videos or business coaching. And I need somebody like you that can help work me through that process.
And what exactly would that look like?
Well, it would look like you teaching me how to present better, what to look for, how to read what people want, and how to close at a price point that I'm happy with.
Okay. What's the value of that to you and your operations?
Well,
I see where this is
for
going.
that, yeah, I was going to say, I think you're looking for a dollar point. I don't know what the dollar point would be. I would think it would be X percent above whatever maybe I'm making now.
And what's X% hypothetically?
So let's say,
Notice I just probed.
let's say it's a six-figure business. All right, so it's 100,000. I really think I need to get it to 125. So
How
then you
soon are
got
you?
it out of me.
Yes. How soon are you trying to accomplish that?
Oh, I mean, obviously the answer would be as soon as possible, but if we could do it in the next 4 to 8 weeks, I'd be at least get the process started. I'd be thrilled.
Okay. And what you're offering to have me come in to do that? Notice now what I'm doing.
Oh, you making me tell you what I'm going to pay you?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
Greg, that's good.
Yeah, because I may think the engagement from my perspective, again, just using round numbers, is worth $100,000. You may think it's worth $200,000. And based on the information that you've given me, that your operations will be exponentially expanded, I now have enough input to go, wait a minute, I was only looking for 100,000. He may offer or is thinking about offering me
Right.
200,000. With that insight, I can do several things. I can, depending upon the future business, and I would talk to you at nauseum about the future opportunities that might come about and how we can structure to make sure that does occur. And that's something that salespeople have to be aware of also. Clients will promise the moon sometimes,
Right.
and find out you're really just at the ocean. So you always want to structure a deal such that you get what is most valuable to you up front. Meaning, hey, if it's a $200,000 situation or opportunity that you and I settle on, and you put mile markers in there to justify where we are as we engage the process of reaching our goal, I then need to know, well, hey, if we're halfway, I've gotten my 200,000 payment plus now, let's say there's an incentive to get more, a percentage of whatever additional business you bring in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So salespeople have to be aware of, number one, the promises that will be made for the future opportunities and get as much of it up front as they possibly can, while at the same time understanding if you're at 200,000 and I was only expecting 100,000, boy, oh boy, could I generate some extremely goodwill by saying, you know what, Charles, how about if we settle at 175? You go, 175? I was willing to give you 200.
Yeah.
No, Charles, but let's reshape this structure such that I get a percentage of the growth that your business occurs, et cetera. So there are multiple ways to actually structure deals that are beneficial to both you and your client. And now I've really shown you, hey, I'm not trying to stick my hand so deep into your pocket that I just want what's best for me. I'm really looking out for you too. And by the way, think about this, Charles. Who's going to give up an extra $25,000 if the client is willing to pay them? Not
Right.
people.
So the folks that hire you, how do they come in into the discussion process just absolutely a nervous wreck, knowing that they're hiring you to teach them to be better at the thing you're about to take them to school on?
Well, one thing we do is only accept referrals. So that means just anyone can't walk in the door. We've already positioned ourselves by doing that, only accepting referrals, as to say, through bona fide sources, this person, this guy is really good.
Right.
So the expectation is, you come from a very reliable source, Greg. Would you be in favor of honoring us by taking on our situation? And depending upon the cause, the purpose, or something of that nature, I may say yes right away, or I may probe to find out more about it. I will at sometimes, let's say again, I'll use the $100,000 mark. Say, well, our engagements start in the mid six-figure range. Depending upon the entity, though, I may let them give me a figure which is substantially more than that six-figure engagement. So now I noticed you looked at the clock a moment ago. So how?
I did. We are at 23:10, so we have a couple of minutes, and I've got 82 more questions. So we're just going to have to, we'll have to forego some of my questions. And yes, good call. The clock is right. Not that you guys can tell it's right. You can't see that right there in my corner. So in looking at that, what are just some quick basic body language tips that? Better yet, what are some basic body language tips that we all always misinterpret? Because I think everybody thinks they're an amateur body language expert. And what are some things that we get wrong with that?
Well, we could talk about the one that just occurred. Being aware of what happens. I noticed that you looked away. I made the assumption that you were looking at the clock.
That's right, because you can't see the clock.
Yeah, exactly. I can't see the clock, but I made that assumption. Now, if you're making a presentation and you see someone look away momentarily in that manner, and you know or suspect that time may be a factor, that's something you need to honor with the person with whom you're speaking, such that they say, well, you know what, this guy really is more attentive. Subliminally, you score points by doing so. The other aspect, again, that one should be aware of in body language is, again, the pace of speech, which is a nonverbal communications also, that people use when they're speaking, because the pace of speech can be altered ever so slightly, depending upon how somebody feels at that particular moment. If you note that change, and it occurs throughout every conversation, you will then note how to alter, again, the presentation you're making or the communications interaction that you're actually having with someone. We've done this several times, pulling away and stepping back. That's yet something else to note. Here's a big one. And to establish how someone uses their body in a particular situation, you observe how they act when they are in a neutral,
Gotcha.
a non-threatening environment.
We find their basis.
There you go. Exactly, Charles. See, you're a student with this
I'm
stuff.
listening,
also.
man.
Yeah. So you note exactly how they use their body language in a particular situation when they are not threatened or anything, and you then have something to compare against, because it's not with everyone, but some people will look up and to the left, to their left, when they're trying to recall something that has happened in the past. Now, again, you in general conversation, you ask someone, so how was last weekend for you? And they go, well, it was kind of nice. And then you ask a question, so what might you do in the future to enhance your business operation while bringing me aboard? And they go, well, I'm not sure. Well, they looked up into the past where they go to access data or information from the past. Now, you would expect them to look up into the right, because people look up into their right when they're trying to envision what might occur in the future. Again, not with all people, but if you establish their baseline per how they answer questions before you enter the official negotiation process, you can then gain that insight and you'll know more about that individual's thought process simply based on their body language. Those are some quick clues. Face-to-face, here's another one, real fast. Face-to-face engagements. When people are engaged with one another, they will usually have their feet pointed towards one another. When one person turns a foot away, yes, that person, and now you did a whole body that time.
I did.
That person is giving you a glancing view of them. They're getting ready to exit.
Yep.
If you are noting what they're doing, you can actually align with their body again and see if they adjust, align your body with theirs to see if they, again, point in an opposite direction, which is confirmation they're getting ready to move away, and or say something along the lines of, you know what, Charles, we're running out of time right now. Did you notice the synchronization of what I just did?
Yep.
I looked at my watch.
At your watch.
Yes, we're running out of time right now. When would be a good time to pick this up? I did two things there. I respected the time frame, and I used an assumptive question. When would be a good time to pick this up? The assumption being, we will pick it up in the future. That's a way to lead someone also. The person can say,
sure,
you know what, Greg, let's get back to that situation at another time. Okay, when would be a good time for me to do so? Again, using questions to control the situation. And they say, well, I'll reach out to you. Okay, what time frame will you reach out to me? Soon. Okay, just so I can plan for my calendar.
Right.
How about if I haven't heard from you by next Friday at 1:30 p.m., I reach out to you. Okay, that'll be fine. Bam.
So wrapping up, one final question, and I always end with softballs, but we're gonna stay in the realm of things. Clarify something. Is arm folding really just meaning I'm closed off? Because sometimes I like to think this is just comfortable.
And that's what it can mean, Charles. Exactly. And here's something else. Because of a woman's anatomy, women will tend to cross their arms more than men. It does not necessarily mean someone is closed off. We look at cluster of actions to indicate what's truly occurring in someone's mind. Someone may be cold, and that's why they're folding their arms at that particular point in time. And you need to note exactly at what point, per what you were saying, that they crossed their arms. So if you said, that's my best offer, and they did like this and pulled away from you and looked away from you or something like that, you had three signals at that particular point in time that more than likely, that person's not satisfied with exactly what you've just said per their best offer. Speaking of which, always be mindful and be extremely careful when you say, that's my best offer, because you put a line in the sand.
Right.
Yes. So don't use that unless you truly mean it and you're ready to walk away from the business or whatever you're speaking about. And you should always be willing to walk away no matter what it is that you're negotiating for. That way you don't lock yourself into a situation where the more people negotiate, the longer they negotiate, the more likely they are to make concessions that are unnecessary.
Gotcha. Last question. Do you find yourself doing this all of the time, even when you don't want to. I've got a friend of mine that is a YouTuber, movie critic, very successful. He can't watch a movie now without it absolutely being ruined by him critiquing it. Does that happen to you when you just go to Subway or have to wait in line at Kroger?
Well, I do, because as I'm writing my post every week, as I'm doing my podcast, I write about what I experience. And sometimes I don't intentionally try to look at a situation from a negotiation perspective, but then I see a negotiation lesson in it. And when we started off, Charles, you asked, how can people enhance their negotiation and body language skills? And I said, be attentive to what happens to you in every environment that you're in. That's
Right.
exactly what I do. I practice what I preach, because you're always negotiating.
Always negotiating. Greg, how can somebody find you?
They can look under a rock. No, they can, they can reach out to me at Greg, Greg, at the THE Master, MASTER, Negotiator, NEGOTIATOR.com via email, or go to themasternegotiator.com. I have lots of free tools also. I
Yeah,
love
you
to
do.
help people, and I just give away stuff. So by
Awesome.
all means, if I could be of assistance, I'm more than willing to try to do just that.
Greg, thank you so much. Ton of useful tips here. I'm gonna go back and rewatch this thing a couple of times myself. I'm nodding along. I'm assuming that means something as well. Hey man, thanks for being on today.
Thank you for the invitation, Charles, and thank you for the great work that you're doing to enhance the lives of others.
Thank you, friend.